And welcome back, casuals, to episode 10 of the JEB Board podcast. Congrats, guys. We made it to double digits. I don't know how. This is Grace Naplin here in Atlanta, Georgia. Back again with me is Cheese Brain Kyle Overhart, Lumberjack Nick Noah, and the bound to get was just a way for them to play harder, Caleb Naylor. We are down. We are down a compadre this week. Brandon Black has been suspended one episode, so we hope to have him back ready at game form next week. Yeah, I mean, it was actually a pretty good weekend this past weekend. A lot of us got to see each other here on the podcast. We had our fraternity alumni event down in Mobile, so unfortunately, Kyle wasn't able to make it, but me, Nick Noah, Caleb Naylor, and BB were all together and got to see each other hang out. We thought about doing a JEB Board special down there in Mobile, but by the time we did that, there was too many beers in everybody, and that was never going to work out.
Brother, we would have made it 5 seconds before I got canceled.
Yeah, so that was not. Yeah, that wouldn't have made it. We wouldn't have made it far. I'll put it that way. So, but again, like I said, episode 10, we're going to start everything off with our highlights of the week. And one of the first highlights that we have here is just Christian McCaffrey. I guess number one based off of consistency with how well he's playing. But I mean, dude just got hurt last week, right? Like that was questionable for the rest of the game. Came back out here. 54 rushing yards, 64 receiving yards, 7 receptions, and 2 touchdowns after coming off an injury. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is just out of his mind right now.
14 touchdowns in 8 games.
That is,
I mean, almost 2 a game. And what he just tied the old guy from the Colts. Yeah, I quit. I didn't cuss there. The old guy from the Colts for consecutive games with a touchdown. So, and I mean, I think he's gonna. I hope so because I've got him in most of my fantasy leagues. I hope he continues to set that record and put it. I mean,
far out of
kind of cool to see him keep it throughout the entire season.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that going to our second highlight, which was a pretty big highlight, was the Kansas football team going out and getting them a win against what were they ranked? The number 8 ranked Oklahoma team
6.
they had? Yeah. 6. Yeah, this number 6 ranked Oklahoma team. Kansas has been one of those teams that we've seen in the past, especially over the past 3 years, where they may end up 9-3, 8-4, but usually they have 1 to 2 huge wins every year.
Well, that's only the last 3 because you look at it right before that, they were winless. They were going 0-12.
Yep.
So I mean, they've fully done the 180, and they're still on track for their normal, which is again, like you said, the 8-5, 9-4 kind of season.
Yeah. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit later too, like this same game, but I mean, the great games from Neal, their running back. Bean played all right. Now, Bean did not play well at all. Realistically, don't know how Kansas kind of won this game when you look at it statistically and on paper. But because they got outrushed, they only had. It looks like they just shut Dylan Gabriel down. Is really what it was.
That and special teams, big plays on there, big returns.
For sure. And then finally, our third highlight right here is in the boxing space, which I know a lot of us don't keep up with a lot of boxing, but there was a big matchup this past week. It was Tyson Fury and Francis Ngannou. And Francis Ngannou
was robbed.
Yes. Yeah, he kind of went out there and made a statement that he belongs in the boxing world.
Dana is praying he comes back.
Yeah. Sure. Well, and I saw one of the I saw that one of the commissioners or whatever for whatever WBO or whoever it was said that Francis Ngannou will be ranked in the top 10 even after that fight. I mean, he was able to score a knockdown in his first boxing match against arguably the best boxer of our generation.
100%.
Tyson Fury's still undefeated, and I mean he beat Wilder
Twice.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the tie, but I don't know. Like, it definitely is a statement to Francis Ngannou, with how good of a just athlete he is to step in, and he's obviously got the immense MMA background, but coming in because it's completely different. But boxing sucks. I hate boxing.
I don't know. I think it depends on the weight class for boxing.
I don't know. Like, if that was MMA and he scored that knockdown, he's getting a hammer fist from God. I mean, like, Tyson Fury's head will have a Ngannou shaped hole. So
I mean, would you watch the rematch, Nick, if they were to give him one? Because I think they deserve a rematch after that.
Well, from what I've heard,
watch it.
From what I've heard, they're gonna do an MMA rematch. Like Tyson Fury is saying that. Yeah,
Tyson's not gonna make it out of that ring.
no.
Tyson's never wrestled.
Yeah.
Tyson's never taken a head kick to the cranium.
I mean, can you imagine his legs when he's going to take a leg kick from Ngannou?
Well, I mean, look at Tyson Fury's legs. They're not. I mean, they're twigs.
Saying.
And then you see Ngannou. Yeah.
Dude's just an absolute physical specimen.
Yeah, that body's built by the salt mines of Cameroon. Like that, he's a physical specimen.
Yeah,
so
I can't think of any boxers that really do good in the MMA. So I just
name one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I mean, they all have the boxing like training, but I don't know.
And to be fair, I can't think of any MMA fighters apart from Ngannou having a great, fight against Fury. But there's not really many MMA fighters that manage to succeed in the boxing ring either. But it's just they're two different sports. You may as well treat them as two different sports.
I would say the UFC fighters don't go long because of the length of the match.
I feel like it's football and rugby.
Yeah.
And boxing is a more point-based sport as well. Yeah. Like
I like to see blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick likes to see Anderson Silva's leg wrapped around another leg.
Oh no, like I just feel like MMA is like modern day Gladiator. Like we're going in and we're trying to see who the baddest motherfucker is, in this. Like, I mean, there's very few things that you can't do. I mean, besides from like headbutts and different things like that. Yeah, I mean, but with boxing, I don't. And plus, like, I don't like the 10-ounce gloves, like, because you can knock someone out easier with those 10-ounce gloves because I mean you're kind of like bricks for hands. But I don't know. I just I can ramble on this for a while, so I'm not going to.
Well, I guess one thing is I agree with you to boxing. Like you only watch certain fighters, but UFC, I'd watch any card on the UFC.
Absolutely.
Compared to boxing.
Some of the best
voting in the UFC is much better.
Yeah.
Some of the best fights that you'll watch is just like two mid-ranked guys that are going in there, like a prospect and like a gatekeeper that go in, and like you got this 33-year-old guy that's been or 35-year-old guy that's been in the UFC for 8 years, and like he's a gatekeeper, and then you've got this like 25, 24-year-old hotshot that's going up against him. And just, I mean, they usually go to war, and it's usually like a styles clash too. Like you have the young striker, but then you have the old vet that's like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu super black belt or something like that, So
Randy Couture type people.
Yeah. Well, the fight that pops out to me, like right off the top of my head, is like when who was it? I think it was Cowboy Cerrone when he moved up a weight class. He went and fought. God, it wasn't Damian Maia, but it was somebody else. It was another Brazilian guy. Went and fought him up a weight division. And like they were talking about how Brazilian guy was, going to try to take him to the ground and never could get him to the ground. And eventually that like third round that, actually it was a main event, so it was a 5-round fight. And that 5th round, the Brazilian dude just said screw it and just started throwing bombs with Cowboy Cerrone.
Yeah.
So
You want to talk about someone throwing bombs? Anyone in this podcast and anyone listening, look up Don Fry.
oh yeah,
Look him up on YouTube. You will thank me for it.
Yeah,
That
you want to
man.
talk. Yeah, you want to talk about people not doing well and being a bomb themselves? It's North Carolina.
absolutely, yeah, and that leads us into our lowlights. Yeah, North Carolina did not look great. We went and we hyped them up a couple weeks ago, put them in the elite tier and saying they were the elite team, and then they go and they lose 2 straight damn games. So I don't know what their problem is. I really don't. Like, I think they just listened to the podcast and they said, okay, we got JEB Board's recognition. That's all we need. So because their game against they lost to Georgia Tech this week.
Yeah.
And that was, they lost by 4 points. It was 42-46. So realistically, it's none of the stuff that we've talked about. Omarion Hampton, one of the mainstay guys here on the podcast, 153 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Drake May had 310 yards passing off of 17 pass attempts or receptions. He went 17 for 25, 2 touchdowns. And the bad thing about it is, North Carolina had the ball more. They had the ball 5 minutes more. Like, it wasn't a time of possession thing like it was last week. But they did get outgained by 80 yards. And it was all on the rushing attack from Georgia Tech, because Georgia Tech had 287 yards rushing.
I think this year's just proven how important defense really is for a team. You look at these high-powered offenses,
Mhm.
You got to have a defense. UCS, and North Carolina, without their defenses, they have blown games they should win.
Kyle, you messed up your own correction.
I know I did.
Yeah.
I
USC.
realized
No,
it.
no,
I
UCS.
realized it half. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I just did that."
You
My
incorrectly corrected your correction.
My bad. Anyways, but these high-powered offenses aren't going to win you games in the fourth quarter, and it's been proven multiple times this season.
South Alabama.
We're
Yes.
the pride of the red, white, and
400
blue.
passing yards.
Yeah.
20 points.
Also didn't help that North Carolina had 5 more penalties than Georgia Tech as well.
Yeah.
Second low light, which is another team that underperformed this week, was Kansas City. The Kansas City Chiefs. They lost to the Broncos. So they the fun fact here, the final score of the game was 24-9. Broncos, obviously. The Chiefs didn't score in the second half.
That's insane.
Did not score in the second half.
I refuse to give the Broncos that much credit. It has to be issues at the Chiefs.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is like
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, it's the Taylor Swift curse.
Yeah. And when you look at it, it's like they outpassed them 213-87, talking about Kansas City to the Broncos. But the Broncos had 153 rushing yards and also had about 7 minutes more of possession. So also too, the Broncos had 6 sacks. So the defense actually got after them. And I don't know, it's I feel like looking at it here, Isaiah Pacheco should have more than 8 rushing attempts.
Yeah. I mean, that's the worst defense in the league, arguably.
Well,
And you don't score a single point in the second half. That's
well, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were like definitively the worst rushing offense
Yes.
or rushing defense.
Rushing
They
defense.
they were allowing 150 something yards a game. So there's no reason why.
No, it was like 180.
Oh yeah. So there should be no reason why Isaiah Pacheco has 40 yards rushing, and then your next highest rusher is Pat Mahomes for 20 yards. Clyde Edwards-Helaire only had 4 yards. McKinnon had -2. Kadarius Toney had -3. So I just don't see. I don't see why you're not giving Pacheco the ball more when he's shown that he can, he can be a running back. He can be a true running back if you allow him to. Now, granted, I know they got down kind of early, but to be fair, they were only down 14-9. So there's no reason to abandon the run game that early.
No. And I think the problem's still there is no true number one receiver.
No.
And I think it was one of the last drives for Kansas City to actually take the lead. Crap, what's his name? Number 24, Sky Moore. Sky Moore dropped a wide open pass in the end zone for a touchdown. And it's just these drops are just continuing to plague them. But I will say, and I am no Kansas City fan by any means, but the rumors are starting to heat up that D-Hop may get traded before the deadline. Yeah,
which is tomorrow, right?
And, yeah.
Is the deadline tomorrow? Yeah.
Yeah. And so I will tell you right now, if DeAndre Hopkins goes to the Chiefs, they're probably going back to the Super Bowl because of their defense. I mean, their defense is solid. And you give D-Hop plus Travis Kelce and Pacheco, and I mean that's going to be dangerous. But if they don't sign another receiver, because Valdez-Scantling, Darius Toney, and Sky Moore are not cutting it.
Well, their best receiver right now is Rashee Rice.
Yeah,
he's like
the rookie.
The rookie. He's probably their best receiver right now in terms of consistency.
So I've heard some crazy things of Devontae wanting to get out from the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Raiders already said they're not trading him.
Yeah, but everyone has a price, and I think
Pat Mahomes for Devontae Adams.
I mean,
not that price.
I don't know. I feel like if teams say like this guy is untouchable, teams aren't going to entertain like, oh well, how much are you willing, because they don't feel like
untouchable is he?
Yeah.
So the Colts drafted John Elway and said the same thing until they eventually traded him to the Broncos in the same draft. So, who knows? He's worth more to the Raiders at this point with the team they have around him. He is worth more to the Raiders as trade bait rather than the receiver he is. And it's a shame that he's at that stage, because we've talked about it in the past podcasts. I mean, that's a generational player. So hopefully we'll see.
I'd love to see it. I wish Devontae was at a better team. I think he's getting wasted.
Kansas City gets both of them.
Oh, I'd quit watching. There's no point to watch anymore.
Yeah, better luck next year.
Yeah.
Well, and then the final low light that we have for this week is the LA Rams. They just got torn apart by Dallas. And looking at the game stats, Dallas only had 3 sacks and 1 turnover. So, when you look at the score of the game and the flow of the game, the fact that Dallas went up 17-3 in the first quarter, I'm sorry. And then they were up 33-9 by halftime. You're like, oh, Dallas's defense must have been just, tearing them apart. Now, granted, they were probably tearing them apart in terms of just playing solid, consistent defense, but they weren't making like explosive turnovers or just dropping Matt Stafford left and right. They were just consistently not letting them let their offense get comfortable.
Dallas did have a pick 6 and a safety and a block punt, though. So I mean, but besides that, just they really shut down Cup, and I mean, it's very, very, very evident that the Rams just do not have a running game. And I mean, I think I talked about that last week. It's just the lack of the running game is killing them. But then, I think it's funny though that after the game, Aaron Donald ran up to who is Cowboys coach?
It's
Mike
McCarthy.
McCarthy,
yeah. Ran up to him and said, "If you want me, come get me."
He did say that?
Yeah.
How about that?
That's something to, God, that would be disgusting having him on the Dallas because I hate Dallas.
Mhm.
God, that would be insane though.
It just sucks every time Dallas hype finally goes away. They get some stupid win like this, and then they're back. The boys are back. Here they come.
My favorite meme, and I've taken great pride in referring to this meme in all my years as a Saints fan, is just waiting to see on if y'all still them boys yet. And I'm been so saddened this year because I haven't been able to send that to anybody.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong about the game, but did Stafford get hurt?
I believe so. At the
I think he
end.
did because Brian
Mm-hmm.
Ripien came in and I mean he threw 10 pass attempts.
Yeah. Matthew Stafford slammed his thumb into I don't know who it was. He slammed his thumb into somebody's helmet.
Mhm.
And then came out like 2 possessions after. It just kept lingering and they were down. So something to watch.
Would anybody care to guess who the leading receiver was in terms of yards for the Rams?
Tutu Atwell.
Nope, he was second to last.
Was it Puka?
Nope, it was Henderson, Darrell Henderson.
Damn.
Really?
3 receptions for 54 yards. Next one was Tyler Higbee, then Puka Nakua, and then Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was 4 receptions for 21 yards.
Dang.
Cooper, you're my power parlay, by the way. You're the only one that didn't hit.
Well, all right. Well, that
I
gets
like
us
that you whispered that.
Keep it a secret. They don't know you have an addiction if they can't hear you, Nick.
They can't hear your silent screams.
But Ryan Day gives him phone calls.
Friday with the bars, my silence was loud.
The only thing that's missing. So I guess moving on into NFL, getting out of our highlights and lowlights. We have our last week of the divisional breakdown this week, and we are finishing it off with the NFC West. Obviously, for everybody that's listening and doesn't know, the NFC West is the Seattle Seahawks, the Arizona Cardinals, the San Francisco 49ers, and then the LA Rams. So we'll start with Nick. I know he keeps up with the Seahawks actually quite a bit. So, Nick, if you want to start off with your take on the Seahawks so far this year.
Yeah. I feel like they had a very slow start to the season and they just kind of fell into the middle where people quit kind of paying attention, I guess you could say, unless for like fantasy reasons. But they're 5-2.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I feel like Geno Smith has fallen off just a little bit from last year because, I mean, last year he was so good that everybody was, raving about his comeback. This year he's 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1,700 yards. Not great, kind of middle. Their running game, Kenneth Walker is great. They've got, a 3-headed monster in Charbonnet and DJ Dallas, which DJ Dallas is hurt right now. And their receivers, DK and Tyler Lockett, are still, just a great duo with the addition of Smith and Jibba. But their defense is what's improved so much. Bobby Wagner, God, he was a beast, a couple years ago, and he's their leading tackler with 76 tackles through 7 games. That's pretty good. That's almost 11 tackles a game.
Yeah.
But their sacks is what's so big right now. They have had 26 sacks in 7 games. And last year they were the league lowest in sacks. So they have really built up that defensive line. And I think that's what's winning them games. So they really have a good outlook on the conference. So there's somebody to keep an eye on because again, they're above San Francisco right now.
True. And I guess with you saying San Francisco, I'll go into San Francisco. So I'm trying to figure out how I want to start this. The 49ers are they, with the talent that they have on paper, they're one of, if not the best teams in the NFL. I think where they start to falter is when they start losing those 1 to 2 key pieces. I mean, let's look at their offense, for example. They've got Brandon Ayuk, they've got Deebo Samuel, and they got George Kittle as their main targets for receivers, right? Well, George Kittle has been on a steady, slow, yet decline over the past couple of years in terms of production. He did get hurt last year, and this year he's iffy, which you would think with a quarterback like Brock Purdy, who is newer, and he is surrounded by weapons all over the place. I mean, I've yet to mention Christian McCaffrey, who is arguably the best running back in the NFL in terms of handoffs or catching it out of the backfield. But as we saw a couple weeks ago, if they lose 1 to 2 of those guys, one being McCaffrey and 2 being Deebo, then that loses a lot of options for Purdy. And he didn't really adjust well to his other weapons that he had. You would think if you lose I guess you could consider your number 1 receiver in Deebo Samuel and then your running back, you would think you would utilize George Kittle a little bit more, and he really didn't, and he still hasn't. Brandon Ayuk has been a solid number 2 for the past 3 years on that team. He has shown signs of being a 1, but he is the number 2 on that team. So like I said, on paper, their offense looks great. Look at their defense. You've got Bosa. Let's see, that's Nick Bosa that's on the 49ers. He just signed his contract, and he is by far and large. There's a huge gap from where he was last year this year in terms of sacks, even tackles for loss. Like, he had a very slow start to the season. Fred Warner's also on the team. I mean, Fred Warner's arguably the best linebacker in the NFL as well. And then you've got the safety. What's his name, Nick? You said he reminds you of Troy Polamalu.
Oh, Tafunga.
Funga, yes. He's also in that secondary as well. So they've got some like star players like in the making, or if not already star players on the defense. Looking at their defensive statistics, up until, let's see, there have been 3 games this year out of the 8 games so far where they have allowed over 20 points. They have had an interception in every game except this past week against Cincinnati. Against Dallas, they had 3. They've had two fumble recoveries on the year, and the only game where they didn't have a sack was against Minnesota last week. So their defense is making plays, and they're getting stops, and they're getting the ball back in the offense's hands. But like I said, over the past, what's it been, 3 weeks, I guess, they've just kind of started to falter a little bit, and there's cracks in the juggernaut that we thought was the 49ers. They went from the unbeatable 49ers to a good NFC 49ers team that could make it, instead of being, they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, they could make it to the NFC Championship game. So I've heard a lot of tone changing, especially for them and for like Brock Purdy too. Everybody was saying that Brock Purdy was the second coming of Jesus Christ and Tom Brady combined, but again, he's in a comfortable spot. He's in a really good spot for a young quarterback. But in the same token, if that one or two of those pieces gets taken away, and God forbid anything happens to his line like Trent Williams or anybody like that, then how is he going to adjust? And he is just failing to adjust right now.
The conversation is going from look how good Purdy is with this offense to, oh my God, look what somebody else could do in this offense. Like, what if we had like even a Dak Prescott or, some of these guys, like, oh my God, this offense could be unstoppable with someone besides Brock Purdy. Whereas, 3 weeks ago, it was Brock Purdy, runs this machine, perfectly, to now it's like, oh, well, we're kind of one step away if we had like a dynamic, because Brock Purdy's still kind of in the middle, in my opinion, but It's just
Well,
that tone change you were talking about is very real.
Well, and the bad thing about it too is that like last year with how Purdy played, and even going into this year, like we always talk about floors and ceilings, and so you have your floor for him last year. It's like the floor and the ceiling both went up, but now it's like they've seen him play, and now, especially with some of his weapons being hurt or being out, his ceiling is starting to come down, and now there's just like a smaller gap in which to expect out of Purdy. He's not going to break out and like win you games now. It's just more along the lines of like, hey, this is what he's going to be able to do. But if this person's out, like expect that to be more towards the floor. Let's Kyle, why don't you give us a little bit on Arizona?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into too much depth like you did, Grayson, but the big news right now is Dobbs has officially been benched, and they're going to put in Clayton Tune. It happened about 2 hours ago. So to me, that means Arizona is officially in tank. They are going to look for a QB next season. I guess we all can agree it's Williams. I mean, that's who everyone's been talking about. But when you bench the second string QB, you're tanking. They're probably trying to bring in some help for Marquez Brown. Defense, horrible. I think we all got a little fooled on week 3 when they beat Dallas. We were thinking like, oh, maybe they can get something going with Dobbs, but not so much. So from now on, I don't think they win another game this year. Like I said, I think they're in tank season. I think they want the number 1 pick, and they're going full blown for Williams. Which leads me to believe that Murray's going to be on the market this offseason. And hopefully they'll try to either bring in some pretty high, I can't even say Murray's worth a first round pick, but maybe they'll try to bring in some more weapons for Williams when it comes up. But as of now, they are just an embarrassment to the National Football League.
What about everyone and Arizona's coach saying that Kyler Murray's coming back not this week but the next week? Because he's officially been upgraded from the PUP list and is like I said, I mean they said as soon as he's ready, he's starting.
Yeah, I haven't seen that story, Nick. I said, I just saw on the 2 hours.
I didn't know if you
yeah. I didn't see it yet. I did, like I said, I saw Tune coming in. He's going to be the starter for sure this week.
In my opinion, I think they're going to bring back Murray to try and like show his talent and increase his trade market.
Yeah, and I could see that. I would of course we're not GM, so we can't really preach to the choir here. But bring in Murray for maybe 2 games, and if you lose them, put Tune back in.
Well,
the bad thing.
The bad thing about Murray too is that he just signed for a new contract for a decently lucrative contract. So the talks trading him is. If you're an opposing GM, sorry, I'm getting molested by my dog here. For the opposing GMs, it's like, okay, they just signed this guy to a 4-year. What was it, like 85 million? Wasn't it something like that?
It's some ridiculous number.
Yeah, it's pretty high. I think it's up there, like on par, maybe more with what they signed Daniel Jones for.
Yeah.
They just signed this. Huh?
I almost want to say it was a 40 million per year, to be honest with you.
It was a 4-year, 35 million plus a 23 million signing bonus.
Yeah.
Okay.
So altogether.
35 million a year or 35?
No, over 4 years.
Oh,
that was a lot less.
But he had a $23 million signing bonus.
So realistically, it's like closer to 60.
Yeah. Yeah, but that takes it off. That takes the pressure off a team that wants to trade for him. You don't have to get him that signing bonus. All you got is $5 million.
Yeah, so that kind of changes it a little bit because I thought all that money was like on contract, so they don't have to worry about the signing bonus.
I think they restructured it to be more of less per year, and we'll just give you a good lump sum now and call it a day.
You can almost look at teams like the Giants. I hate to say the 49ers because it's still too early for me to say that, but maybe like the Packers or the Bears where they have some weapons. Maybe you just need a little, I don't want to say veteran, but experience behind the line to get them going. And I truthfully believe that Cardinals are in tank mode. I I can't see him. I mean, everybody keeps saying Williams. I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to fight the masses here. Everyone keeps saying Williams is a generational quarterback that can change your team. So if I was them, I would tank.
Gotcha. Well, Caleb, that leaves it to you with the LA Rams.
Yeah, when I look at all the teams in the NFL, the LA Rams have definitely earned their spot as the third team in the NFC West, but they should be playing far better than they have been. One thing they have proven this season is they do have talent on both sides of the ball. And it's just a shame. You certainly can't put it on Matt Stafford's shoulders. Matt Stafford, I think I was looking at rankings. I think Matt Stafford statistically is ranked 7th in the entire league. So Matt Stafford is not doing bad. He's got 2,070 yards on the season. Cam Akers going over to the Vikings. Not that he was making all too much of an impact, but that's kind of opened the door for people like Kyron Williams. He's got 456 yards on the season rushing, which compared to a bunch of other running backs across the league, like Alvin Kamara. I think Alvin Kamara has played in half the games that Kyron Williams has played in, and Alvin Kamara was able to reach like 300 yards. I think,
and that's not even taking into consideration just scrimmage yards in general.
Yeah. And so, we were all very, very high on the Rams. Like, I think just about everybody was pretty high, especially with the emergence of Puka Nacua, and he really balled out, and he's definitely made his name as their lead receiver up to this point. It is worth noting, though, that Cooper Kupp, although having missed some time, Cooper Kupp is at 361 yards with Puka Nacua at 795. So even with the time missed, Kupp has been putting out a very average to mediocre performance, but I wouldn't say Kupp has been abysmal. He's had bad games. Nick talked about it earlier. He had a bad game yesterday, but Puka Nacua is the standout receiver in that offense. And then you have also for the defense, you have Ernest Jones, who's been, recording some really good numbers. He's ranked very high amongst all of the defensive players in the NFL right now. He's got 43 solo tackles, 1 sack. That dude's a stud.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, when I look at the Rams, I look at all these talented, exciting players to watch, and it's such an anomaly why they can't put it together. It really is to me. And but they play like a team that should be third in their division, and they play like a 3-5 team. So
they're playing like Detroit did when Matt Stafford was at Detroit.
Agreed. They are
valid.
And I think
statistically good, not getting the dubs.
I think, and that comes down to the question of that's a matter of inconsistency.
Yeah,
I fully believe. And that poses the question of, is it the players or is it the coach? Because I think when McVay got there and brought in when he brought in Matt Stafford, and even when he had Goff, there, he was they did well. They played in the Super Bowl that year against the who was it?
Patriots.
The Patriots, yeah.
The worst Super Bowl of all freaking time.
Yeah,
Saints would have beat them. Just saying.
Yeah, but
going off that, Grayson, you look at Goff now. He's doing good at Detroit, so maybe it is a coach thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. I've
heard that if McVay ends up leaving or gets fired or whatever, I've heard and read some stuff that if he ever gets fired from the Rams, he doesn't take another job. He just takes his ball and goes home. No shit. He just
Cliff Kingsbury.
He's 2.0. Bring it back from Singapore or Thailand or wherever he's at.
Yeah, he's got his Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean,
well,
John
Double-
Gruden, head coach of the Los Angeles Rams.
He got. Hmm.
So that will lead us into our game predictions. So last week, we did a lot better than last week. I'll put it that way. Last week we had a 20% accuracy. This week we have a 52% accuracy. We are still at 52.5% for the year. Caleb is at 18 or Kyle is at 18 and 22. Went 2 for 3. Caleb went 3 for 2. He's at 19 and 21. Nick is at 27 and 13. Pick 4 or 5 right. BB, rest in peace. Until next week, he's 17 and 23. He went 2 and 3. And then I'm at 24 and 16. I went 2 and 3 as well. Games this week for everybody that's not watching. We have Miami at Kansas City, the Seahawks at the Ravens, the Cowboys at the Eagles, the Titans at the Steelers, and the Bills at Cincinnati. So we'll start off with Kyle like always. Kyle, why don't you go ahead and run down your picks for us?
Yeah, so Miami and Kansas City. I got Miami. I actually don't think this is going to be too high of a scoring game like we all think. I actually think it's going to be low 20s, but Miami wins it in the grinding matchup there. Seattle versus Baltimore. I think Lamar Jackson has a big game here. Seattle's got a great young team, but I think Lamar, with his experience, is going to run out on them pretty well. Dallas versus Philly. Every week, Dallas wins a big game, and then they go to the next week and they blow the next game. Philly, I think it's going to win this. Jalen Hurts has a big game. Tennessee versus Pitt, low scoring, boring game. I almost don't want to watch it, but give me Tennessee. Give me old Levis, boy. And then Buffalo at Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati stays hot. They kind of do this every year where they suck in the first half of the season. They come out and they start playing great. And I think this is last week was a turning point for them, and I think they can keep it up.
All right. Caleb, what are your picks, boy?
I am taking the Dolphins beating the Chiefs at Arrowhead. Chiefs look bad. It's an understatement. We've already kind of talked it to death, but they did not look good at all against the Broncos. However, I don't even know if it's going to be so much KC not showing up to play. It's just Miami they're hot. Like, that offense is just red hot, and I don't think KC is going to be able to keep up with them.
Mm-hmm.
If they had DeAndre Hopkins, I might think differently. But
We'll see in 24 hours.
Yeah. So with Seattle and Baltimore, I'm taking Baltimore. I just like Lamar Jackson. With Lamar Jackson, I feel like he's going to be able to do whatever he can, whether it be in the air or on his feet. He's going to make all the plays that they need to make in order to get ahead of Seattle. Defense is going to come up with the stops they need to stymie the Seattle offense. So I just like the Baltimore Ravens in that one. Dallas and Philly, that is a game I am 100% watching. This might be the best game of the week. I am picking Dallas. Dallas has proven that they can take on receiver talent against an offense. That Dallas defense is unforgiving. Dak Prescott is finding his stride. So Dak Prescott has been showing up, especially like he did against the Chargers. He was able to really kind of keep them in a winning position. So I think Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys, especially that defense, are going to be very dangerous against the Eagles. So picking the Dallas Cowboys. Tennessee and Pittsburgh. With Tennessee and Pittsburgh, I think Tennessee is going to ride the momentum of starting Will Levis and winning one against the Falcons. They're going to capitalize on that against a pretty topsy-turvy Pittsburgh Steelers team. But I think Tennessee has the weapons, especially if DeAndre Hopkins plays like he did, if he's not traded. If he plays like he did, I feel like Tennessee would do fine. And I think they do fine without Hopkins. With Buffalo and Cincinnati, I do not think that Cincinnati is going to ride the wave. I think Buffalo is going to come out. I know the game's at Cincinnati. I think Buffalo is going to come out and return to form and really kind of put the Cincinnati Bengals back into place.
All right, Nick, that leads to you.
Miami this year and a lot of last year, they showed that they can beat up on. I don't know how to put it. They can beat up on the teams with a losing record, but they cannot stay in competitive games. That has been shown this year and last. Let's see. I don't think they've beaten. No, the only teams that they've beaten this year have losing records. I think they're a little bit overhyped. And I think Kansas City comes out. And last year, Tyreek Hill torched Kansas City. This year, Kansas City's defense is going to be able to not necessarily stop Tyreek Hill, but they're going to stop everything else, in my opinion. And I think they're going to get, they're going to pressure Tua a good bit. And you've really, really seen Miami's run game just diminish. And I mean, yes, you've got Kansas City that struggled against the Broncos, but I mean, I don't put one game into saying that Kansas City's just bad. They're still 6-2. So yeah, I'm taking Kansas City and Arrowhead. Baltimore, Seattle. I think Baltimore has a couple more pieces on defense that it's going to be a very low scoring game, in my opinion. Baltimore did not look nearly as good this week. Whereas, wait, who did Baltimore play this last week?
Let me take a look real quick.
I thought they actually did pretty decent. I can't remember who to play, Bob.
They played the Cardinals and won 31-24. So, I mean, it was a 7-point game against arguably one of the worst teams. So, I don't know. Like, Baltimore should win this game on paper. I wouldn't be shocked, though, if Seattle was able to win it. But I just think Baltimore has a couple more pieces on defense that cause them to win. Dallas, Philly. I would almost say similar to the Kansas City reasons is that Philly has struggled a couple times this year when they pressure Jalen a little bit and he makes ill-advised throws. Jalen Hurts has definitely taken a step back from last year because, I mean, Jalen Hurts, in my opinion, should have been MVP last year. And now, don't get me wrong, he's still great, but he's just not playing to the caliber that he was last year. Meanwhile, their biggest thing is if Stephon Gilmore is matched up on A.J. Brown, if he takes away and holds A.J. Brown under 100 yards, which I think is very possible, it's going to be very tough, though. Dallas comes out. Tennessee, Pitt, I really don't like talking about either of these teams, so I'm gonna go Tennessee since they're riding a little bit of momentum with Levis. Then you got Buffalo and Cincinnati. Buffalo, again, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record. They have things figured out a little bit more where there are more questions with Cincinnati. Granted, Joe Burrow had like 90% completion percentage last week, but Buffalo has a little bit of a better defense than the 49ers right now. And so I think Buffalo is going to be a very similar game to when they played Miami and beat them like 48-20. Now, I don't think it'll be that, that high of a gap, but I still think Buffalo kind of comes out and wins outright.
Yeah. Well, that gets into my picks. So I'm going to pick Miami in this first game. And the reason I'm picking Miami is that I firmly believe that Miami is going to score. I think they're going to be able to score points. I would have picked Kansas City if they would have more consistency, like we talked about earlier, how they were only able to muster up 9 points against the worst defense in the NFL. Kind of trends me away from Kansas City, plus the fact that Jalen Ramsey is back and also had an interception, almost had a pick six this past week. So I'm going to go with Miami just off of I know that they'll be able to score. I don't know if Kansas City will be able to score. And I don't think the game's going to be a shootout. Like I really don't. I think Miami will score close to 30 points, but I honestly can't predict how many Kansas City's going to score. Seattle, Baltimore. I'm going to pick Baltimore in this one as well. I know that Seattle's offense runs through right now, currently Kenneth Walker III, just because of kind of a down year for Geno Smith. But I think since the game is in Baltimore, and like Nick said earlier, they've got pieces on defense that keep them in games. So I think they'll be able to win another AFC North dirty, nasty game against Seattle. With Dallas and Philly, I'm picking Philly based off the sole fact that Dallas still beats the teams they're supposed to beat, and their defense is so hot and so cold. And I think with the offensive talent that Philly has, I think they're going to be able to keep consistent pressure on the Dallas defense. And yeah, Stephon Gilmore, I mean, he may, put AJ Brown in like in contain somewhat and, give him less than 100 yards, but they still have Devontae Smith. They still have Dallas Goedert. They still have DeAndre Swift. So, and another thing too, from what I've read or heard, I think somebody possibly told me this, is that Jalen's kind of hurt right now too. He's kind of playing hurt. That's why he's not making plays with his legs as much. So, but I think they figured out they're going to win against Dallas. And I know it's early in the season, but I think that this will kind of like lock them up in the division this week, and solidify them as the number 1 seed with no questions asked. So with Tennessee and Pitt, I actually wrote down Pitt on paper, but I'm changing it to Tennessee because one thing I forgot to factor in is that Kenny Pickett left the game Sunday with a hand
injury.
Yeah, rib. Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought it was hand to wrist. So he left the game. So I don't know if he's questionable or what. But with them losing their number 1 quarterback, as good as he's not,
Might make him better.
yeah, honestly, Jalen Warren is starting to come out more as the number 1 back over Najee Harris. I don't think future Dynasty League MVP Will Levis will have the week that he had this past week. Like he won't have 4 touchdowns. Like honestly, I could see him having 1 touchdown and probably like 225 yards passing maybe. Because I don't think really anybody was expecting that from him this week. So I think it's a low scoring game, but I'm saying that Tennessee pulls it out. Don't worry, I wrote it down over here on our records. And then finally with Buffalo and Cincinnati, I'm going to pick Cincinnati, just be honest with y'all, just based off the hot streak. Like, I know like they played a really good game this past week, got them a win. Buffalo, I kind of put in the same category as Dallas, just not as volatile. They've got games where they play really well, like against Miami, they played really well, but then they got other games like when they played the Bucks on Thursday, and they only won 18-24. So, and I mean, Tampa Bay's defense is great, but yeah, I think there's a little bit too much inconsistency, and I think Cincinnati just catches them on a good week. I wouldn't necessarily say they're the better team, but I think Cincinnati has a good week this week and gets a win. So, well, moving on into college football, we're gonna scoot through the game of the week and the player of the week pretty quick because we actually have a segment that's going to take a little bit of time, but I think everybody will be interested in. Game of the week this week, for sure, without a doubt, was Oklahoma and Kansas. It was a great game to watch, and it was also an upset. It was our upset of the week last week, or upset watch last week. So, and we talked about a little bit earlier, the running back for Kansas had a great game. And their defense was able to hold Dylan Gabriel to like 171 yards passing. Player of the week, we threw
That
Bo
was
Nix.
also our upset, by the way. We predicted it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Said that.
Oh, Grayson, do you want to go over BB's pick real quick? That weren't Watson's.
For the NFL?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, we left out
Yeah.
BB.
Pick the
Kansas
same
City,
as
Baltimore,
me.
Dallas, Tennessee, Buffalo. Okay.
Damn, you didn't get too close to the camera with only your eyes showing.
Oh, my bad. I'm supposed to like. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Kansas City because I like Andy Reid and I like that he goes to the same restaurants I do to go eat. I like
Hamburger.
yeah. All right, I'm done. Not even doing it anymore. Going back to player of the week. We picked Bo Nix because Bo Nix broke the record for what starts in a
that was last week.
Yeah.
So he's just adding on now.
Ended his record. Yeah. But he went 24 for 31, 248 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He took 2 sacks, but he also hit 7 receivers with a reception.
I think it's a very strong Utah defense.
Mm-hmm. So that moves us on into a new segment right here. We know there's a lot of talk about the college football playoffs, and the college football playoff committee will be dropping their rankings tomorrow, and so it didn't really time to where we could do a reaction slash analysis of it. So we're going to do it, take it a little step farther, and I know this idea is a little bit in jeopardy right now, but next year the NCAA is supposed to go to a 12-team playoff. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do our hypothetical 12-team playoffs that we would choose this year. Now, we do have a little bit of criteria for it. We have certain criteria. That way we couldn't just like throw in all SEC teams or Kyle throw in all Pac-12 teams. We're going to do the Power 5 champs, one Group of 5 champ, 4 conference runners-up from the Power 5, and then 2 outliers. So we've got them pulled up right here. And so what we'll do is let's start with Nick, and we'll go through them, and we won't really talk about like Georgia or Michigan or Florida State that much, but what we'll do is talk about some of the teams that we threw in there that, you know, maybe ranked a little bit higher than other people ranked them, or like somebody that nobody else threw on at all. So Nick, go ahead with yours from the top down.
Georgia's at the top for me over Michigan. And I feel like that's really the only debate between those two is who's 1, who's 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, I mean, Georgia losing Brock Bowers definitely was big, but they didn't seem to lose a step against Florida. Michigan, they have their allegations going on with their, sign stealing. So you've got that going on. But again, I mean, they're really, you can flip-flop either way, in my opinion. Then at 3, I've got Florida State. Just because Florida State really does not have a strong schedule to finish out the year. The best team that they play is either Miami or Florida. And I think they should be fine in both of those games.
Mm-hmm.
But they do I'll get to that later. Because they have another team on this list that I put that they could play in the ACC championship. But again, I'll get to that in a second. Then I've got Texas. I still think Texas will win out, and they'll have to play Oklahoma for the Big 12 championship. And again, I mean, that's why I've got them kind of flip-flopped with Oklahoma. I've got them higher because I think they'll win the rematch. Then I've got Washington. I think they'll win the Pac-12 outright. I mean, there's not really much to say other than that. Ohio State, same thing. I think they'll be the runner-up, but they could beat Michigan. They could. I mean, we talk about how like not good Ohio State is, yet they are undefeated. And Marvin Harrison Jr. has, been playing out of his mind. And I mean, he's pretty much considered as the number 2 pick behind Caleb Williams right now. So I think he's kind of bringing that offense to life. And Travion Henderson for Ohio State has really upped his game and really given them a second piece. So Ohio State still definitely very much in this conversation. And then I kind of already talked about Oklahoma. I think they're going to lose to Texas. Then I've got Ole Miss being the runner-up. I think Ole Miss is going to go to the SEC championship because I think they win out and then lose to Georgia. And so they'll have like a 12-2 record, or I think that's right. 11-2, whatever. Then I've got LSU right behind them as one of my outliers. LSU, I think, again, they kind of went out. I think they beat Bama, but they lost the head-to-head against Ole Miss, so that keeps them out. But I think with their quality wins, I still think they would get in.
Mhm.
Then kind of the same thing with Oregon. Now, I will say, I mean, if I don't know the Pac-12 like Kyle does, but if Oregon and Washington play again in the Pac-12 championship, Oregon beats them. So, and I think honestly, if they lose and the only 2 losses they have on the season are both Washington, they still get in. And then I would have as my group of 5 Tulane, because I mean, I don't see them really losing, and their only loss I would put in, and this is all honesty, I would put in a 1-loss Tulane over an undefeated Air Force for, I mean, just statistically, I think they're a better team. And then lastly is the my reigning ACC championship, Louisville. Louisville, they have some quality wins against Notre Dame and Duke. I think Louisville wins out, and then they could beat Florida State in the ACC championship. And if they do that, I'm not keeping them out. So that's who I've got.
Yeah. Well, I'll go through mine right quick.
Motherfucking Louisville.
I'll go through mine right
Yeah.
quick. So with mine, I put Michigan at 1 instead of Georgia at 1. The reason being is that I see Michigan as a little bit more consistent play this year. Georgia has, I mean, the world's largest cocktail party or whatever it's called down in Jacksonville this past week wasn't even close. But I feel like Michigan's most consistent, so that's why they get the nod for me instead of Georgia. I've got Florida State at 3, undefeated, probably going to be the ACC champion this year. I've got Washington at 4, just based off of what they've done so far. I think that could potentially fluctuate, but just with them being a Power 5 and just like for my like purposes and stuff, like I'm sure everybody here sees it, but if you're not watching at home, basically the way I did it as I put the Power 5 champs at the top, and then I also threw in Texas at 5, so there's my 1 conference runner-up, but I also threw James Madison at 6. That's my group of 5 champ. I know they're technically on a suspension right now, but this is all hypothetical, so you can kiss my ass. So I threw James Madison at 6 because even if they are ranked as high as 6, they still have to play someone in the first round and have to kind of prove themselves. It would be different if I had them 1 through 4, because the way bracketing works in a 12-team playoff, the first 4 teams get a bye. So 5 through 12 have to play. So Texas 5, James Madison at 6, Oregon at 7. I still feel like Oregon's one of the better teams in the country, even though they lost to Washington. I feel like if Oregon would have won against Washington, I feel like that they would just be flip-flop right now. But I feel like they're pretty even, like in terms of talent, Oregon and Washington. I dropped Ohio State to 8. I'm still not necessarily impressed with Ohio State outside of Marvin Harrison Jr. I still think their offense could be more. Honestly, they've got a great defense. But I feel like their offense could be a little bit more, and that's why I don't have them on the same level as Michigan and Georgia. Oklahoma, I've got them at 9 because I see them as a runner-up in the Big 12, but I'm not very impressed with them. They honestly, I think Texas should have beat them. Obviously lost to Kansas this past week. I wouldn't be surprised if they take another loss, honestly. Dylan Gabriel's inconsistent. The only thing that's really saving Oklahoma is their defense, which that's what you expect from Brett Venables. I've got Alabama at 10. And the reason why I have them at 10 and LSU at 12 is because I can't really decide who's going to win the SEC West and be the conference runner-up. But I feel like LSU could possibly. There's still a pathway for them to win the SEC West, even though they lost to Ole Miss a couple weeks ago. So I feel like they could be interchangeable. But Alabama at 10, let's just say they are the SEC West runner-up. I feel like they are the worst conference runner-up, maybe besides Oklahoma. That's why they're right under Oklahoma. I just don't think Alabama's on par with what they've done in the past 15 years. Then I also threw Louisville at 11 as well because I feel like they're going to be a conference runner-up, and they are going to give Florida State the time of their lives in the ACC championship game. And then finally, like I said earlier, I've got LSU at 12, mainly because I think that LSU would be a fun team to have in there because I feel like, let's see, they would probably have to play the 5 seed, which would be Texas. And I feel like that game would be a shootout. And I think there's a chance for LSU to win just based off of their offense alone. So I think I honestly think it'd just be fun to watch them in there.
They definitely take out some teams.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to Kyle.
Yeah, so I got Michigan at number 1. I just think they're the most complete team compared to others, defense and offensive side of the ball. Going off to number 2 of Georgia. Georgia's offense is up and down to me, and on a head-to-head, I think Michigan would take the win there because of the complete team with them. Going next is Washington. I honestly think Washington will beat Oregon again in the Pac-12 championship. I think they are the better team. I think the defense is why they're the better team. Going off next is Florida State. Easy schedule, win out. I just don't think Louisville's going to beat them in the ACC championship, and that's the way it's lining up now. So I got Florida State just winning out. Next is Ohio State. Only loss this year to me will be Michigan. It's Ohio State. They got speed. They got good receivers, and I mean they got a pretty decent defense. They got the number 1 defense in the Big Ten, so got them at 5 for that. Ole Miss, if they had a defense, they would be one of the best teams in the country. But without one, Ole Miss to me is right on the outliner. I see them winning out for the rest of the year, but they're going to go to the SEC championship and lose to Georgia. Next up would be Oklahoma, and I always believe that the Big 12 is overrated conference, and I have no reason not to think that this year. And that's why I got Texas right behind them. I think those teams are just, you can switch them either way. Not impressive, overhyped. Next, I have Oregon. I see them going to the Pac-12 championship, losing to Washington again. But Bo Nix, with his experience, makes that team very dangerous. I believe he will be the Heisman candidate this year. But they don't beat Washington again. Next up is Mizzou. I actually see Mizzou. I'm spoiler. I see Mizzou beating Georgia, but Mizzou's going to lose a stupid game somewhere around the lines, and it's going to line up to where Georgia gets back in. But they are one of my outliner teams. Next up is Air Force. Air Force to me, and this is going back to James Madison being on suspension. I kept that in mind when I did this. If I didn't, I would probably have James Madison here. But Air Force, they're a one-sided offense, very run-heavy. And like I said, if James Madison wasn't on suspension, I would put them over Air Force. But as of now, I have Air Force in there.
Would you
And
say
then
Air Force is a air raid, but with triple option?
I have no comment on it. The last pick I got Penn State, last outliner. Only losses to me is going to be Ohio State and Michigan, and if you got them in, you're going to put Penn State in on them.
All right.
There you
Well, well, Caleb, before we get to you, I'll run through BB's right quick.
Alrighty.
He got Georgia. He had Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Texas, and then Ohio State. Then he picked Oregon. And then number 7, he threw in Air Force. Then number 8, he threw in James Madison. And then 9 was Missouri, 10 was Alabama, 11 was LSU, and then 12 was Oklahoma. So he had 4 SEC teams. Air Force, who's in the Mountain West, correct? James Madison, who is in the Sun Belt. And didn't even put Washington in there.
There are 2 other teams out there. There are 2 other teams out there somewhere else in the NCAA that aren't outliers because he had to have 2 SEC outliers.
And 2 group of 5.
Yeah, and 2 group of 5.
I'm convinced that BB, like, the end of the college football season is the SEC championship. Like, that's
Probably.
it. All right, we're done.
Yeah, probably.
All right. Well, Caleb, finish this off for us, and we'll get into our game picks for the week.
All right, sounds good, Grayson. So, we've talked Georgia and Michigan to death. It's not so much a question of whether or not they should be 1 and 2. It's who's 1, who's 2. I have Georgia at 1 just because I feel like they've played just a bit more competitive of a schedule than Michigan. But all in all, I do think Michigan is the more seemingly complete team. I just have to give the nod to Georgia just because I think their schedule's just been a little bit more competitive than Michigan's. Be very interested to see them play each other. I have Oregon at number 3. I think Oregon is a dynamo. I honestly do. They'll get to play USC really soon, and I think they're going to run away with the Pac-12 championship. They're going to beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship, and I think they'll find their stride. And so going into Ohio State, I have Ohio State at 4. Ohio State's been, they've been playing tougher. I feel like they've had a tougher schedule than Michigan has, and Ohio State. I really like watching them play. They're an exciting team. Of course, we've all talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. With Texas, I think Texas is we're looking at the Big 12 champion whenever we're looking at Texas. So they're going to beat Oklahoma. Texas is going to be in the running. And then, if this were a 12-team playoff, I personally would enjoy seeing a 12-team playoff with Texas in it. I have Alabama below Texas for the logic behind that is that, Texas beat Alabama. So until somehow that rights it, Texas has to be above them.
Since when the hell have we used logic on this podcast?
I sure have it.
I was about to say Kyle was off the episode like the other night.
Yeah. So right underneath Alabama, and I only have Louisville below Alabama just because the ACC, it kind of proved itself with North Carolina this past weekend. But the ACC has been the Louisville and Florida State show. You will notice that I do not have Florida State on this list.
Yeah.
Because I think Louisville is going to win. And if we're having with the criteria we have, we can only pick 4 runner-ups for each conference. I did not think Florida State needed to be in there. So, below Louisville, I think Louisville's going to win the ACC. I think Louisville is a force to be reckoned with. And I would love watching a playoff whenever Louisville would be in it. So, Penn State, that's one of my outliers. I think, if as far as Big Ten teams that have looked really good throughout the season, come up short at times, had their bad games, get them out of the way. I think Penn State deserves to be an outlier just because of just how exciting they are to watch, and they got some really, really good talent at the quarterback position as well as the defensive positions and everything. I mean, they beat the brakes off of Iowa, so I think looking at that track record, they have to have a nod for being an outlier. And then, pretty much aligned with what Nick said about Tulane, I would take a one-loss Tulane team over a no-loss Air Force, which is exactly what I did. So I got Tulane, and then I got James Madison, which we talked about their suspension, but James Madison's been running the show in the Sun Belt. If we got to pick two group of fives, we gotta pick James Madison. Or how many group of fives was it? 2 group of fives we had to pick?
Well, we just had to pick one group of 5 champion, and then you can throw one in there with an outlier.
Okay, cool. So in that case,
you can do like 4. I mean, I don't think the rules apply to him anymore.
I gotcha. So with James Madison, I'll consider them one of my outliers. And then for Air Force, or should I say Air Force? I gotta. So I have Air Force in there because as we were doing this list and everything, it came to my attention that we have not talked about Air Force once, and they're completely undefeated. Now, granted, they're in a very weak conference. Now, that being said, I think whenever I was deciding whether or not to include Air Force or maybe a one-loss outlier, I was thinking to myself, what's one thing that makes talking like Kyle over here. One thing that makes March Madness so awesome is having those Cinderella teams. And I really think having Air Force as a Cinderella team would be pretty cool. It'd be like watching Stephen F. Austin? I don't know, but
Stephen A. Smith?
Stephen A. Smith Austin University.
You're talking about Stone Cold Austin.
Stone Cold Steve Austin University.
Well, that's going to move us on into our game picks for the week, guys. Before we start getting way too off the rails. So
we're having fun, fellas.
Damn. Sorry for having a good time.
It's okay. Bo Nix is too.
Yeah.
He's having fun.
According to Kyle, could be a dark horse for Heisman candidate.
Hey,
He
man.
might next year. And when he claims his
When he
7th
comes
year.
back.
Year 10.
Yeah. Well, Caleb, we good?
We're good.
Perfect. All right. So our games this week, for everybody's not looking. Well, actually, I'll go through records right quick. 72% last week. And we were sitting at 63.5 for the year. Kyle went 4 for 5 last week, 27-19. Caleb went 3 for 5, is at 29-17. Nick went 4 for 5, is 33-13. BB went 4 for 5, is 25-21. And I went 3 for 5 last week, and I'm at 32-14. Our games this week are LSU playing in Tuscaloosa. Missouri is playing Georgia. Oklahoma is playing Oklahoma State in Bedlam. Kansas State is playing Texas, and Washington is playing USC. So we'll speed through these real quick. Starting with you, Kyle. Let's do the LSU and Bama pick.
Every one of my picks is a spike pick. I just want to make that very clear of why I picked all these. LSU beats Bama.
Okay. You gonna explain, or you gonna go to the next one?
Because I hate Bama. I hate all their fans. Terrible T-shirt fans. All right, thank you.
All right, Caleb.
I grew up in
I
a
was
part
born
of
in the
coastal
woods.
Mississippi where you could argue it's pretty much western Alabama and eastern Louisiana. So growing up an Alabama fan, there were just as many LSU fans in that area. It was a dark time for Mississippi State and Ole Miss. So a couple bandwagons here and there. But I grew up with a seething hatred of the LSU Tigers. I hate them more than I have ever loved the University of Alabama. I cannot stand the LSU Tigers. I cannot stand Brian Kelly. So tied by 1,000,000.
Go Tigers.
I do like Ed Orgeron though.
Nick.
LSU.
Sounded like BB.
Well, BB picked Bama, and I'm also going to pick LSU. I think their offense is. I think it's. Bama's defense is good, but LSU is going to be able to score. They're the Miami of the college football world right now.
All right, with Missouri and Georgia, I got Georgia winning. Georgia, they've had some ugly wins here and there. They haven't looked perfect, but they look great enough to beat Mizzou. So, yeah, I got Georgia going.
Nick.
Brady Cook is a baby back bitch. Georgia.
Me and BB both are going to pick Georgia as well. And then, Kyle, why don't you go ahead with your pick?
I freaking hate Kirby Smart. I hate him. I hate him. Go Mizzou by 1,000,000. Brock Bowers is in there. It's coming back to reality. Mizzou by 1,000,000.
By the way, I don't know if you have noticed, Kyle hates the SEC.
That's not true. I like Ole Miss and Mizzou. Don't let him lie to you.
Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
About to start making car bombs.
Whoa. That's
Kyle.
a drink, by the way. That's a drink.
I didn't mean it like that, though.
Kyle, pick the game, please. Oklahoma and Oklahoma State.
We should just leave this one uncensored.
Oklahoma State. Oklahoma's dog shit. Everybody knows it. Next pick, baby.
Nick.
I want Oklahoma now. I don't want Oklahoma State.
Okay.
When I first put it, I was like, oh yeah. That's I kind of try and have an upset every week, but no. Oklahoma.
Well, BB's picking Oklahoma State. I'm also picking Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma is reeling, and I think they drop one to Oklahoma State. Caleb?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma makes the adjustments after this Kansas game to pull it out against Oklahoma State. I know Oklahoma State's been pulling it together a lot better since they lost to the University of South Alabama Jaguars, but I don't think that it's going to be enough to overtake Oklahoma. This is a rivalry game. This is Bedlam. And
Last one.
Yep, the very last one. And I think Oklahoma will be damned if they're going to let the Cowboys take it away from them.
Well, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. It's happening.
Shut the fuck up. Kansas State and Texas. Caleb, please.
Texas, hook 'em horns.
Nick.
I'm never picking against Texas again, Texas.
BB's got Texas. I have but hold on, time out. I don't even know why I'm reading BB's. If you want to know what BB picked, just look at Nick's picks. That's how he thinks about it.
He literally said, I concur.
Yeah.
Except LSU. Except Bama at LSU.
Yeah, I'm picking Texas. Kyle, who you got?
I mean, it's Kansas State, baby.
Where
Texas
else,
ain't even a real
Kyle?
place. God, you know what? Texas and California are the same damn state. And I hate to admit it, but it's true.
What's your thoughts on
Next pick. Let's go.
All right, so everybody picked Washington. We're not going to get a singular analysis off this game.
I don't know. I got a couple things I want to say about Washington versus USC.
Well,
I'm kidding.
God, why did we all pick Washington? Well, Kyle, why did you pick Washington? Here, let's go with that.
Because Williams is a dog shit player, bro. Like I said, every week, he's going to get some poor GM fired in the NFL. And this is going to prove it why right here.
Yeah.
Grayson, will you change mine to USC, please?
Are you serious?
Yes.
Oh,
God.
that's a bad decision.
Well, why are you wanting to do that, Nick?
Because Kyle's talking shit, and Caleb Williams, I still think is one of the best quarterbacks in the draft class. And whether his defense supports him or not, I mean, that's all I got.
Gotcha.
So when they score 7 points this week, I don't want to hear nothing.
Write it down. Somebody write it down. Oh, I'm the note taker. I'll write it down. Caleb, do you have anything to add? I'm picking Washington. You're picking Washington. Anything to add? All right. Well,
I've changed 2 of my picks.
Yes, you have.
Just for fucking Kyle.
Well, speaking of Kyle, that gets into our favorite segment of the week, Kyle's out-of-pocket pick of the week. Kyle, please, for the love of God, tell us who you have for your OOP this week and explain your reasoning.
I'm excited because I
Rutgers,
forgot.
baby.
Oh my
Rutgers
God.
will win outright against Ohio State. And Ryan Day is going to be like, I can't complain because Tony Soprano would whack my ass if I do. So, give me the Rutgers in a close one.
The
But they are going to
Rutgers?
win.
The Rutgers.
Yes,
Oh
sir.
my gosh, man!
What do you know? Do you know what their mascot is?
That's a good question. That is a good question because I do. What is it? An acorn? It
Are
looks
you
like an
kidding
acorn.
me, Kyle?
I honestly don't know. That is a good
The
question.
Knights. They're like this. I think the Scarlet Knights.
They are Scarlet Knights. Where the hell did you get an acorn from?
I don't know. I thought there'd be a little red.
The Buckeye.
Rutgers
less,
Acorns.
I thought
Is that
they'd be a
the
little
fucking
less,
Nut Bowl?
Oh shit! Okay.
You know, at like the hour 10 mark, I was like, this has been pretty solid. And
It's
then
falling apart
holy
at the seams.
crap.
All right. Last.
Caleb pissed me off with his fucking 3 G5 teams in the fucking playoffs. Okay, I'm done.
Outliers.
Caleb is laughing through the pain of the amount of time he's going to be editing.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
sorry, Caleb. I'm
I gotta
so
enjoy
sorry.
it now.
I'll send you a 20 because I feel like that's what I owe you.
So our final topic, upset
Oh.
watch. Yeah, we still got the upset watch to do. We picked Arizona State and Utah. What's going to be the factor that wins Arizona State this game?
Low scoring game. I think their defense is going to have to score against Utah to win this. I don't think either offense is going to really produce anything. So it's going to come down to either a special team score or a defensive score.
There's a report that Cam Rising's coming back this week.
Yeah, for sure.
I've
Yeah,
already made.
I'm
it up,
so
Jim.
tired of talking about the Pac-12. God.
Yeah, I think
You never
Kyle-
have to talk about them again like after this year.
I think Kyle made a really, really good point when it comes to Arizona State and Utah. They're going to have to rely on what in the world? What the hell?
That's
Grayson?
me. That was me. My bad. I thought Nick was gonna say something. You said Kyle made a really good point. I thought Nick was about to say something blasphemous.
I'm just saying I've been good tonight. I've held a lot of controversial
You have.
sayings.
I have not been good. I might be suspended next week.
I think at some point, one or another, we have all earned a one podcast suspension.
Yeah.
But
Well-
anyways, I think Kyle made a good point. For Arizona State to come out on top against Utah, they're going to have takeaways on defense, and I think special teams is going to have to show its head. So, with they're going to have to score on more than offense. They're going to need everything they got to beat Utah, but it's possible.
Yeah. I mean, the game's being played in Utah, but I think Utah has shown its flaws and shown like their weaknesses. And I think if Arizona State if their coaches are smart enough to capitalize on that, keep the ball out of the offense's hands, and score, like you said, score when they can, I think Arizona State can pull it out. But all right, well, that ends episode 10 of the JEB Board podcast. Couldn't end soon enough. Make sure everybody goes checks us out on Twitter and Instagram at JEB Board for Twitter, at JEB_Board_podcast for Instagram. Check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And check out No Dog in the Fight this week, where we move fantasy to. We will have that uploaded hopefully here in the next couple days. So, or maybe already uploaded by the time you guys hear this. So, but other than that, everybody listen at home, don't get hard counted.